a viral clip, add an AI voice narrator, and then re-upload it to the platform. It's just
like garbage, like sludge. Yeah.
We are a couple of years away from living in the pod and eating the bugs.
Exactly. I was doing a bunch of research on the Diddy thing, and I came across like endless YouTube videos that were uploaded of like AI voice commenting on, like this week Diddy did this, and it's like not real content, not real information. Right. It reminds me of a TED talk that one of the tech guys, I don't remember who it was, but several years back there was a TED talk about gamification. Everybody should watch that because the guy was saying that the future will be based on video game studies that were done where the dopamine hit that everybody got from, like when you're playing a game, you unlock an achievement, that dopamine hit becomes the model that the tech companies would use in their algorithm for, social media. So that's the explanation for all of this, is that they know that when you see that, you get that hit. Yeah. And so now you're like addicted to the nonstop constant hit. But then the more you do it, it's a feedback loop that you're not getting the dopamine that you originally got. So it's based on video games.
It put him in jail. It could actually bump him up in the polls quite a bit.
How do you think Trump going to jail would react in
I think it would be like the greatest publicity event of all time, and that he would it would be awesome. Like it would be, I'm serious. Like it would be like total.
But why doesn't he?
Alvin Bragg, when he was the head of the district attorney's office, also turned down the case initially. So the idea that as the last minute when they're stacking all these cases against him, they're like, and we'll just throw this one on too. I almost wonder if they thought they would have Trump imprisoned by now and that this wouldn't matter as much.
I feel like there's an overlooked element that a lot of this domain is a bunch of boomers, and they don't understand the internet, and they don't understand people watching this stuff and the Streisand effect, and that it doesn't work, and they just keep doubling down. Mm-hmm. It's like, whether it's Ukraine or whatever, people keep doubling down on these things from the establishment, from the system. And they just don't understand why it's not working. I'm trying to say, I don't want to change the subject, but there was a clip of a big graduating class at a university, and somebody in the speech mentioned Bitcoin. The entire graduating class, whole university, basically booed the guy. And I'm like, so the university system is basically churning out these completely brainwashed people. They have no idea what's really going on. There's this whole other subset of people on the internet, on Twitter, on X, that know what's going on. It's anything that happens goes viral. Tucker does a show, you do a show, whatever, it goes massively viral. So people really know what's going on. And there's this totally, it's like you're either really awake or you're totally asleep. And the system represents all of these super asleep people who are basically boomers, have no idea what's going on.
Do you think anyone who's asleep looks at this trial and says, yeah, Trump's not getting a fair shake? Is there a chance that non-politically engaged people are getting a negative impression of New York State as opposed to Trump right now?
No, I think anybody who still is locked into that mode of thinking is pretty much there for the long haul.
I think they get together, and then he pulls out a wad of cash and he starts handing out $100 bills to all of his staff. He didn't need to do that. He just loves it.
I feel like anybody who, has criticisms of Trump, if you put this into perspective, like Joe Biden's policies and everything that Biden, it's like an intentional destruction of the country. It's crazy. Like everything that's happened in the last 3 years is like the country's going to crap, right? I think inflation, border, all that stuff. So there's really no options if you're going to be voting. There's just not even any option. You have to vote for Trump. There's no.
Yeah, what are you going to do?
Cloward. I read an article today about Cloward and Piven. If you go deep into that, that makes more sense as to what's going on.
Do you want to break this down? Was it a Cloward?
It's just basically a strategy that some of these kind of weird.
What is it? Cloward, Piven.
Cloward and Piven. It's these two people. It's like these weird communist boomers. They came up with this idea that you could stress the economy through all kinds of government policies, all kinds of basically socialist type policies, and then other means that I won't mention. That would then overwhelm the ability of the system to function, and then it would collapse, and then we would get some sort of proletariat or some sort of uprising or whatever.
So this is
Wikipedia. The Wikipedia.
I got to pull that right here.
Creating this group of people that are going to be dependent, not just on that, just not for them, but for their generations and stuff, and you can't get rid of it.
The difference here, though, I think that makes it a little bit more intense is that this can be turned into something that's an actual weapon to destroy the existing system. So it's like blow it up from within using the means of the system. And that means if this is the operating plan of, what's really going on, then it's not just incompetency that's running the government. There's actually a more, cunning strategy at work, I think, to maybe even destroy the country.
It's malintent through a universal basic income or, something else.
It's chicken in the pot, another version of, yeah, absolutely. But this is like, they know that they know what they're doing. There's not the ability to actually give everybody a chicken in the pot. Right. It destroys things, and then they can come along later, going back to the coon pod issue, and say, "Well, look, I think Klaus even said something like this. He said, "You're just an angry world. We know you're angry," and then he offers the solution down the road of the technocratic agenda. So there's a really great article at technocracy.news today. Patrick Wood's excellent website, and he was outlining how the Cloward and Pippen strategy actually leads to the solutions that technocracy will offer to UBI and so forth to solve this.
But
maybe Bitcoin really is the salvation of breaking the Federal Reserve and creating a universal standard or something?
Yeah, I think to that point, Bitcoin will outlast the existing fiat-based currencies. So basically, it's like a black hole, like Max Kaiser's always saying, that the fiat currencies are being sucked into it because they are already doomed via not being attached to anything and via the governments having, well, ultimately it's private, but the private entities that really, print the money are basically printing themselves into oblivion. Every fiat currency goes to zero. And so with something that has such a strong logic and mathematics behind it, like there's no way that it can lose. I think that certain entities probably want to have a share to try to sway it and control it, like the entities that have come in via the ETFs. But I don't think they're going to be able to control it.
No, I don't think it can be controlled.
Right.
That's the power of it and why it's valuable.
Yeah.
But it can certainly be tracked. And using, and they've already done this.
Right.
They've been able to associate, they took someone's address for Bitcoin, looked at the coins that went into it, and then were able to track every coin and where it went. They mapped out networks of political ideology from it. Kind of scary.
Ooh, I do not like that at all.
Yep.
That's the trade-off, is the semi-private, right? So it can't be totally private. There's a semi-private with the public ledger, but at the same time, like, if this is an invention that's intended to, like, store value and energy over the next 100 years, then it's going to outlive even the people alive today and probably the governments that exist today.
I think
because the Republicans are always, like jumping in every possible hoop to stress that they're not racist, and then the Democrats are always the one making the faux pas, kind of like admitting what they really think.
Yeah.
But then everybody thinks, no, if you're conservative, you have to be racist.
Great.
Can we go back to what Democrats were saying 20 years ago, where like Quentin Tarantino was always arguing that you should shout the N-word from the top of every building? Remember that? Like, but
Is
now,
that actually what he said?
yeah, there was an article. He gave an interview, and they were like, "What do you think about free speech?" He was like, "I think we should shout the N-word from the top of every building."
What was that
And
nice
then he
go-to
did in all of his
example?
movies.
And then he does.
It's like, dude,
but then he's like, like super Democrat, anti,
It's like we watch Pulp Fiction, and I'm kind of wondering, like, Quentin, did you just really want to say the N-word as much as possible?
And he wasn't hiding it, apparently. He's given interviews being like, yes.
Yeah.
From the top of a building.
It's like he wrote himself a character that literally just keeps saying it over and over and over again. And it's like, okay, like, we get it, man. You know what I mean? Like,
But then he's like the most, he'll go after anybody that's,
But he has
And
the
there's like,
right. Do you think humor extends to all parties, or do you think there's sort of a chasm between the types of humors people on the political spectrum can tolerate?
Tough question. I think there's double standards everywhere. And also, I think that people they're less and less understanding humor precisely because of the dumbing down. So people can't grasp like things having multiple meanings, different senses, nuance. That's very important in humor. Comedy requires that. It requires a kind of a high IQ. You have to have, some knowledge of things and understand the sense in which people, but I think a lot of young people, especially like the rise in autism rates and all that, that's creating a kind of a young generation that sees everything as very literal, very, the people you're talking about in terms of like social justice, protesters that are very black and white, very literal. Everything is as it is. Nothing is nuanced. I put out a few tweets last week or maybe 2 weeks ago that went viral. They were obvious jokes, to the same point that you're making about Jack's tweets. And like I was reading through the comments, and probably half of the commenters couldn't grasp a very obvious joke. The nuance that was there, obviously, it was obvious. So I think that, there's a lot going on, but I'm really worried about, going back to the point earlier about the scroll and the feed, like something's going on with whatever's going on with young people, that they're not getting educated. Like
they're missing some sort of wiring.
Yes.
Yeah, they're spending all their time on TikTok and they're flicking through minute-long videos and understanding nothing. It probably wouldn't last forever, but I feel like it'd be a good marketing stint for a couple months where all these companies are like, we're going to allocate our marketing budget to some charitable expansion or something like that.
It makes me
That'd
think
be
of
cool.
when, your local dentist office will sponsor the local baseball team. And so they get like the plaque in the office and maybe the kid's jersey has like the dentist logo on it. But it's, something directly to their community. Maybe they get a tax write-off or something, but they're not running commercials. They're just sponsoring, youth sports.
like Oprah style. Like you could bring people in and you buy them a cow. Like Oprah would get cars for people, but you were
Chickens.
You were promoting, chicken.
Yeah, we should.
a lot of
Can we do an
chickens away.
event where like we give everyone who attends a live chicken?
One chicken. A chicken in every pot. But you actually literally do it.
Jay, do you want to shout anything out?
Yeah, just one brief shout out. We're going to be doing a live event June 22nd in Las Vegas, and you can get those tickets on my Twitter. We'll be live with my wife and with Jamie Kennedy from Scream and from Romeo and Juliet. He does a great stand-up bit. It's going to be a lot of fun, so get your tickets now.
Divinity raises the humanity in Christ through theosis, and that's exactly what we experience.